Good morning, Miami. Trying to wake you guys up a little bit. I think the coffee was being delayed upstairs quite a few times, at least at our table, so trying to make sure everybody's awake. Anyway, the three-letter hated word, TNCs, I guess that's what I'm here to talk about in our experience that we've had at SFO. And Ray's correct, we were forced into it. We initially, as all of you know, we said cease and desist, don't operate here, you're not a legal operator, but then politics came in the way, as it always does in ground transportation. So I have a lot of slides, but I'm going to go through them quickly, so because there's a lot of speakers here. I'll try to present to you the challenges we faced, the permit concept we came up with, the technology we're using and developed to track these vehicles, and the revenue we've been collecting so far, and where we're going next with this particular project. And it is a pilot project for us, which expires at the end of August. So I don't know if anybody saw this recent New York Post article that talks about business travelers and Ray, I don't know if you can see. Business travelers and the percentage of travelers that are taking TNCs such as Uber now. From the airport's perspective, really it's a customer service piece from our side, because customers are demanding this type of service, and we had to come up with some kind of a permit so we could collect our revenue and make the playing field level. But what I thought was interesting in this, now San Francisco, I said, okay, that's fine, 71%, a lot of city residents are taking TNCs. What I thought was interesting was Dallas-Fort Worth, where it's 56% of the rides that were completed by business travelers where they were using Uber and these type of vehicles. And then the Miami and Chicago is still a pretty strong city with taxis, limos, and shuttles, which I thought was interesting. Okay, so TNCs, or Transportation Network Companies, sharing economy, whatever you want to call it. Better defined also as collaborative consumption. Two primary business types. There's peer-to-peer rental car business, which I'll talk about a little bit, and then app-based commercial transportation. Taxi apps, limo apps, and peer-to-peer apps, TNCs, Transportation Network Companies. The CPUC, before they were called NOETs, then the CPUC came up with this term. The CPUC is the California Public Utilities Commission, and they named them Transportation Network Companies. That's how the name has stuck now. SFO uses what we call the ABCT, App-Based Commercial Transportation Tracking Device, which tracks all these vehicles on airport property, and I'll show you, I'll connect my iPhone to the screen and show you how that's done. So the challenge is incorporating this new business model into the existing structure. We had an excellent ground transportation system at SFO, and we still continue to have an excellent ground transportation system at SFO. But this new mode came in. We're trying to figure out how we're going to get them in. First, it was denying them. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit in the next slide. Our main concerns were maintaining safety and security, meeting new and shifting customer expectations, and maintaining a fair and competitive system for all stakeholders. Constant enforcement was another issue as well. It was a cat and mouse game with these operators coming in their private vehicles and trying to catch them in the action, and managing curbside congestion. So SFO's journey. Discovery was our first phase where we started seeing these vehicles, people getting out of vehicles. For folks like Lyft doing the fist bump as they were getting out, you kind of notice saying, okay, this passenger was sitting in the back, the driver was in the front, there was no hug or nothing, they just kind of walked out. It must have been a commercial transaction. So we caught them doing these kind of things. We started with cease and desist letter. Basically, we sent a cease and desist letter to all of these companies that were operating that we identified: Lyft, Uber, Wings, Summon, and Sidecar. And we told them, you cannot operate here at SFO until you get a ground transportation permit. They took our cease and desist letter and threw it in the round bin and continued operating at SFO without any regard to the rule or law. SFO is in a unique kind of environment. We're in the city, we're a city and county entity of San Francisco, but we reside in San Mateo County. So we're out of our county, we're in a different county, and we're dependent on the DA of San Mateo County. We collected a lot of evidence, presented it to the DA, saying you need to start prosecuting these folks, and the DA, due to political will or whatever, was not interested in prosecuting any of these folks. So the cease and desists were there, but we really couldn't do anything to enforce them. What we started doing during that period is collecting a lot of data. And we were collecting where these vehicles were coming from, who the drivers were, We weren't citing him because there was no point citing him. We were just collecting the information. Since the DA was not willing to prosecute, our police department was collecting all the data of the motorist, the license plate, the passenger, and the time and date when these vehicles were coming to the airport. That data was instrumental in getting the CPUC to agree to certain rules that were applied to this particular mode. That data was also instrumental in advising the CPUC by saying, your rules are not being followed by these companies, even though you've permitted them to operate. They're operating without a trade dress. They're operating in different formats. We've seen drivers that are not owning their vehicles, driving for other people, which is not allowed by this particular mode. So then we engaged the CPUC directly with all the data that we had, and we participated in the legislative process. There were many different bills that were introduced up at the state level. We were there. We were side by side with the taxi industry, with the limo industry, all those folks, saying that this industry needs to be regulated. You cannot let it run around without regulation. So SFO has been there from the beginning, trying to regulate the industry. We met with the TNCs at the same time because we knew they were not going to go away. I mean, we're talking Google and Apple, and these guys are backing these companies. So they're not going to go away. They have billions of dollars in revenue, and they have venture capital firms that back them. So in that sense, we knew that they were not going to go away. They were going to continue their operation, but we needed to get our hands around them to make sure that they're regulated on airport property and regulated properly, and the safety, security, and the level playing field requirements are met. So we met with the TNCs trying to understand their concept and their business processes. A lot of challenges came out of there. They didn't want to share any data. They said everything's private. They're venture capital funded, so they don't even want to tell us how many trips they do, or who their drivers are, or what cars they drive. They didn't want to be decaled in any format, or they didn't want anything on their vehicle to be identified as a TNC, and those have been fights for the last 2 years that we've been fighting with them. But we've got to a point where there's a good understanding now on where everything is. So the permit development, as I said, I'll mention a little bit about the other shared modes such as Relay Ride and Flight Car. Those are companies that allow individuals to park their private cars at their lot, where you give up your car where somebody else can rent your car, but you get free parking. I still don't know why people do it, but they're operating at SFO. Relay Rides is permitted at SFO, and they pay us as a off-airport rental car company, which is a $20 fee to use the AirTrain system, so which is what they use. They bring their passengers to the AirTrain system and get on the AirTrain to get to the airport. So they're paying the fees. A Flight Car, we're still in litigation with, so I can't really elaborate much on that. App-based transportation TNCs, we developed a new permit. Companies such as Lyft Sidecar and UberX have signed a permit. We have an executed permit from those companies. They're paying us revenues just like everybody else. Wings is another company that's a very small company. They're trying to change their format. Their format was as a customer, you have to email them, and then they find you somebody to find a driver for you. So that particular company was not really app-based hail, and they're trying to change their system to an app-based. So we're still working the details out with them, and once we're done with that, they'll have a signed permit. Taxi apps. So we just approved Flywheel and Curb to come and pick up at the front of the line at our taxi queues. The way the system works is if you're a Flywheel user or a Curb user, you can summon a vehicle to come and pick you up. As you're walking out to the taxi curb to the front of the queue, the vehicle goes through our garage, pays through our system, because individual drivers pay for their trips, and they get expedited, go all the way to the front of the line, and they get picked up from there. Unfortunately, we've had this up and running for about 2 to 3 months now, and we haven't seen that many trips, because taxis at airports is normally an on-demand thing where people just walk out and take a cab. So we haven't seen too many rides on that. We're talking to some limo companies that are also presenting their business cases to allow them to operate as TNCs using their apps and pay us using their apps. So we're working on those, and we're in discussions with limos. So as I said, this is a pilot project for us. It expires 8/31/2015, but I'd be naive to say that we're going to terminate TNCs and they're not going to come back anymore. They're going to come back. We'll just have to tighten the permit. We're working on rules to tighten the permit even more, where the enforcement piece, as I mentioned earlier, I'm overseeing enforcement now, where we're seeing gaps and where these guys are violating the rules. We're trying to tighten those rules for them. Background checks for drivers, we're still fighting for those at the state level. There's a couple bills, I'll talk about that in the next couple slides. First, it was manual reporting of trips. They were manually saying, well, this is how many trips we did. And I'm sure the group will be shocked if I tell you that the first check we received from Uber was for $856,000 for the number of trips that they had done at the airport in a 90-day period. In my other slide, I'll tell you how many, what the revenue collection has been so far. We've transitioned off to a geofence, which I'll show you, that the application that we're using now. We had to ramp up our police services quite a bit to enforce these rules and make sure that they're participating and complying by the rules. CPUC permit process continues. There is some discussion at the state level where we're hearing rumblings that the CPUC might give up this authority and give it to some other state agency because they're saying this is transportation is not our thing. But that's something that we're still talking about at the state level. We'll talk about insurance requirements in the next slide, and then I'll show you how the geofence works. So insurance requirements. TNCs are required to have commercial insurance on airport property, up to $1 million. And that's consistent with all the other modes. Taxis are $1 million at SFO, TNCs are $1 million at SFO. Once again, we're trying to make the playing field level. The airport is as an additional insured. So even if their driver has a lapsed insurance policy and runs into somebody at the airport is still covered and they're still required to have that $1 million on airport property. And how do we track that if they're on airport property? The tracking application that we have tells us if they're on airport property or not, or if the accident happened on airport property. The other levels that you see, we fought really hard at the state level to keep it at $1 million at all times, but our governor watered it down to that level. So you can see where the politics comes in some of these things. In all cases, like I said, regardless of a driver's insurance coverage, the TNC is required to cover while they're on airport property. We've designed an airport placard where the airport placard has to be in the windshield to identify the vehicle as a TNC. If that placard is not there, they get fined for that. Electronic label has to display the driver's name and what company that they're driving for and who they're picking up or dropping off. Vehicle license plate has to be on there and proof of the transaction. Our enforcement staff check for all of that. When they ask for a label, the person shows their smartphone and they can look at all of that information. Our application can verify, cross-check and say this is the vehicle that's operating for UberX today, and we can bring it up on our application as well. Passenger pickups and drop-offs are only allowed on the departure level. So we've really restricted them to one level so we can focus our enforcement on that level. They have been complaining about that, and we've been discussing possibly a zone for them, but at this stage, it's just a discussion. It's not going anywhere else. Vehicles waiting for pickups have to go into a staging lot. And in one of my slides, I'll show how many thousands of dollars we've fined them for vehicles that were just loitering around the airport property trying to pick up a call. The app must be open when vehicle is on airport property. So if they're on airport property functioning as a TNC, they have to have their app open. Must be presented, electronic label must be presented to any airport employee that has a badge. So if an airport employee asks a driver for a label, and if they're operating as a TNC, they're required to present that. Enforcement staff are out on the curb. We have curbside management staff that are out on the curb. We have hired ground transportation compliance investigators, and those are other folks. They carry these type of devices, media devices. They can pull a vehicle over and say, let me see your waybill. And as I said, enforcement is a heavy piece of this, and we have made sure that they're complying by the rules. Initially, when we activated the permit, we knew they had been operating in violation for all these months, and we'd been fighting with them. So just to kind of get them into the door and make sure they become compliant, we gave them an option saying that you can pay us $100,000 and then activate your permit, which is what two companies did, Uber and Lyft did those, and we're pretty sure they made a lot more revenue than that. But the only one company that paid us less based on the number of trips that they'd done was Sidecar, which was $50,000. Let's see. Monthly trip fees are reported due by the 15th of the month, so we get a check. They self-report. We have an auditing feature where we monitor through our app. Every single trip gets registered, it goes into our database so we can cross-check that. On a daily basis, our IT folks bounce off their feeds that they're giving us and plot them to make sure that they're paying us for the trips that they're supposed to be paying us. We also have a language in our permit that says that the city's controller has the ability to give them a 24-hour notice and go to their office and tell them, open up your books and let me see how many trips you paid the airport for. Enforcement and auditing, real-time auditing is what we're doing with the app, and then city and county will do the other auditing when we're ready. And I think we're pretty close to calling that particular piece now, just to make sure that we're getting the right coverage. $1 million of coverage I talked about already. So what is ABCT? Well, that's the app-based commercial transportation technology that SFO developed. We developed the technology. A lot of airports kept calling us. Our director was asked all the time when he went to either the G10 meeting for the airports or when he was the chair of the California Airports Council. All the other airports kept saying, well, can we use your app? You've already developed this app. Can we use it for TNCs? As our airport folks know, with revenue diversion and all of those issues, we weren't just able to give our app to another airport. So we decided that we were going to give it to a nonprofit, AAA, and let them administer it as a clearinghouse. So AAA, you can sign up as an airport with AAA, use the app that we've developed already. The contract you would sign would be with AAA, and they would tell you what those amounts are. I think Peter knows a little bit about it. I don't know much what they're going to charge. But the airport, SFO is not making anything. I think it's like 1% of whatever you pay AAA. And that 1% is the way we were able to convince our board of supervisors, saying it's not revenue diversion. We're going to be collecting our money that we've invested into the application back, and we're not giving anything away for free. Carter Morris is the person at AAA that's in charge of getting people signed up. So there's his information. The app was developed really to stop revenue leakage. These folks were picking up, dropping off all day long, and we just didn't have enough enforcement staff to run at them and stop them. We wanted to maintain safety and compliance, and we wanted to make sure that the playing field was level, and every single operator that was operating there, getting any benefit out of SFO, was paying for the ground usage. We leveraged this new technology. We worked with the TNCs, and really this was a collaborative effort because each TNC does their process differently. So to get them all on the same page saying this is how we're going to do enforcement and this is how you're going to pay us and this is how we're going to monitor you was quite a big accomplishment. And I think even now, if you think about it, it's there for other airports to use, so we've kind of made it widely available, and it's made it easier for the TNCs as well, so they don't have to develop individual pieces for different airports. GTMS is our ground transportation management system, and we're using that for all the other commercial ground transportation operators. That's a traditional AVI system with transponder tags and AVI readers. We're adding LPR, license plate recognition, to our roadways as well, which will be another method of auditing for TNCs in the future as we go forward. The ABCT tracks commercial private vehicles using their cell phone data. So really, I think there was a question earlier, somebody asked me, well, what stops them from turning their cell phone off before they come in? Well, they won't get paid. I mean, unless they don't want to get paid for the last 2 miles or the $4 that the TNCs charge the customer. So it's to their benefit to leave the app on as they're going through the airport. It's to their benefit to leave it on because in order for them to pick up a customer, they have to leave it on. So that kind of answers that question. So this is how the app works. We have a geofence around the airport. Anytime a TNC vehicle enters the geofence, we get a data ping saying this vehicle entered the geofence. And this is SFO's geofence. If you see, we've future-proofed it in case somebody gets creative and gets into water taxiing. So, okay, so this is a simple graphic. I'll go through another graphic that shows it a little clearly. Point 1, TNC driver enters the SFO geofence. TNC sends us a ping with the driver's license plate number, the company that they're working for, and either a 0 or a 1. 0 means that they're empty, they're going into the staging lot. 1 means they have a passenger in the vehicle. Wherever they stop, if they're dropping off, that's another ping we get saying this person's being dropped off at Terminal 1. So that is a trip. That's $4, going to $4 pretty soon. It's $3.85 at the moment. If that person is summoned again, let's say he's going out of the airport and somebody else wants a TNC, to make it efficient, we're allowing them to do that. Normally we like taxis and everybody else to go to staging and come out of staging. But if this vehicle is going along the roadway anyway, and there's another passenger that's willing to take a ride with them, they can ping him. And when they ping him, we get another ping saying somebody else is being picked up. Well, that's another trip now, because now it's an outbound trip for $4. Going to $4, sorry. I keep saying $4 because it's coming up pretty soon here. So basically, ABCT accepts data from each of the TNCs in an agreed format. In our permit, we said this is what you need to provide. It's very clear, and that's what they need to provide to us. And the frequency, all of that is part of the permit. We get information as they enter the geofence, as they pick up or drop off, and as they exit the geofence. So how do we make sure that the insurance requirements are met? Well, we have all the pings to make sure that they're on property or off property. That data is used on a monthly basis to reconcile with what the TNCs send us, saying this is how many trips we ran, and we run it through our database to make sure that it's correct. Okay, so the TNCs, basically, let's assume SFO's in the middle is a geofence. As the vehicle enters, you get a ping. Drop off, you get a ping. Pick up, you get a ping. And exit, you get a ping. That's basically the general concept. We developed this app, we gave it to AAA so other airports can use it, and it makes it easier for other airports to negotiate with TNCs because they have already developed their side of the technology to deal with this. It reduces cost of operation. Future growth is kind of programmed into it, and I'll go into the next slide which talks about that. And the system can be reused by all airports, not just SFO. That's why we've developed it. It simplifies the permitting process. Anybody that's interested in our permit, I'm willing to share it. I've been sharing it with a lot of other airports. And you can copy our permit to that same format or develop it and design it to whatever you want it to be. So here's how the system scales so far. We can process 70 transactions per second. That's a lot if you really think about it. This is just for SFO. 4,200 per minute and 252,000 per hour. Daily, we see about 13,000 transactions, if you really think about it. The pings I'm talking about as far as transactions. So we've really scaled it to the level that even if we exceed it, we won't get close to it, or we won't get close to the max capacity of it. The data is accurate because we cross-check it. We have IT staff that are on an hourly or every other hour. They run the numbers that are coming in. Recently, we caught a TNC that was doing a software upgrade and they didn't notify us. So we didn't get pings for 10 minutes. And 15 minutes later, we called them and said, we are not getting any pings from you. They were shocked that we were that quick about noticing that they were not giving the pings to us. So revenue, what have we collected so far? Over $3 million in revenue has been collected from TNCs. As you can see, in October, when we first handed out the permit, they did 3,228 trips through the airport. As you go through the months, 5,448 in the month of March. Quite a bit of revenue, $4 going to $4, $3.85 now, for each pickup and drop off at the airport. Taxis, how does that compare to taxis? Taxis last year at SFO did over 2 million trips. The first month that I saw a drop in taxis was December, and they dropped by 13,000 trips in December. But they're catching back up again. This year, year over year, they're up by 2%. So last year, they were up by 6% through the year, even after the drop. This year, they're up by 2% so far. Market share, this is what we see. So what we have going, as I said, we have this big pilot going on at SFO. At the same time, it's like an experiment we're doing as well to figure out where things are going. We have a ground access survey that's going on at SFO in Oakland, combined ground access survey. And it's asking departing passengers on how they got there. If they say TNC, we find out how they got there before TNCs started developing. How were they traveling before that? And so I'll share some of that data with you. So here's what the market share looks like at the moment. 28% TNC, 33% taxis, and 22% limousines. Vans, we have seen a drop of 1% in vans so far, of the number of survey participants telling us if they took a shared ride van or not. And here are the other numbers as far as total trip system-wide. Passenger access mode by shifts kind of clearly shows where TNCs are picking up slowly. 4%, 5%, 7%, they're going up. private vehicles, this is the group that we really want to target to reduce congestion. But it fluctuates a little bit and it hasn't really seen that much of a change. So local origin, location of passengers, I put two slides up here. One shows all passengers and the other one shows TNCs. As you see, the mass passengers that come on TNCs are from San Francisco, from downtown. 70% of them are from downtown in that area, or the avenues where the taxis were not willing to service before. Types of origin points, home, hotel, and I've split it out between all passengers versus TNCs. So this survey gives us a lot of information. We have 37 questions that we asked the passenger, and it comes back with all kinds of information on where they came from, all of that stuff. So I thought it'd be interesting to share that a little bit. Travel party size, TNCs, is we've seen that it's normally one person, single person taking the vehicle, not multiple people, 77%. We even asked how many bags, if they have checked bags, didn't have checked bags, all that is part of the survey. Demographics for TNCs, as you can see, between the 25 and 54 range, mainly your techie groups. App Hail users, previous access mode. This is where we ask them that before TNCs, what would you have taken before TNCs? And 60% of Uber Black customers said that they used to take a taxi, versus 53% of TNC, Transportation Network Company, customers said that they used to take a taxis. So the taxis at San Francisco have seen a hit downtown coming to the airport. That's where they've seen a hit. They haven't really seen a drop at the airport itself, but they've seen a drop for inbound passengers coming in. Just one more thing. Some of the revenue that we're realizing, the 3 million plus that I'm showing, it's coming from really, taxis is part of it because taxis were not paying SFO for drop-offs. That's the only mode that does not pay SFO for drop-offs. Every other mode pays for pickup and drop-off. So we're seeing an increase in revenue because of that. We're seeing an increase in revenue for private motorists that where people used to take, have their friends or family drop them off, are now taking TNCs, so we're seeing some of the revenue from that. BART, our regional transportation system, transit system, we're seeing some of the revenue from that. People that used to take BART are opting to take TNCs. Customers drop off by TNCs also get picked up by TNCs, and that's one of the questions saying, you're being dropped off by a TNC today, are you, on the return trip, are you going to take a TNC? And this is what the percentages have come back so far. More demographics and questions on what kind of trip they're taking, business passenger versus vacation, and where they're flying out to. So there's another slide on that. So analysis and next steps. What are we doing next? What are we looking at next? We have the three largest TNCs, as I said, already finalized their permit with us. Wings is on their way. Another company still has a cease and desist, but we have not caught any of their drivers operating at SFO. Matter of fact, routinely we check their application and it shows SFO blocked. So they're not doing any kind of service at SFO, but we've already notified them that if they do get caught, we'll prosecute them under our trespassing ordinance. Ongoing data collection, we're looking at the actual impact to operations. We've met with operators. We're concerned about operators as well that are operating there. So we're looking at revenues for those operators and fees that we're charging those operators. Matter of fact, in this coming year's trip fees, we're not increasing any trip fees for shared ride mode. Taxis have not had an increase in 10 years at SFO for trip fees. But this particular year, we're going to a 5-year increase, which was already programmed before the TNCs came in, which we've delayed a couple times because of our GTMS project. So once that project comes online, the taxis were aware that it's going to $5, but the pass-through is going to be $4 to the customer. So the taxi driver is still just going to pay $1 per trip. And taxi drivers don't pay for inbound trips. So if they're dropping somebody off, they don't pay us anything. They're only paying us for pickup at the airport. We're looking at additional pilot apps for taxis, which we've already signed up with 2 companies that have agreed to work with us on that. And as I mentioned earlier, California regulation is in flux. Really, CPUC was supposed to do a third round of hearing to develop the permit further and to make some rule changes, but have kind of postponed that. There's a new commissioner at the CPUC, and I think his logic is that I'm in the wrong business. I need to be in the utility business, so I need to give up the transportation piece to some other agency. So the lessons learned: you really can't treat non-traditional businesses in the traditional manner. I mean, they're here, they're working, they're going to work, and even if you try to stop them, they're going to work. So you got to come up with some kind of a format to make the playing field level and make sure that everybody pays. You have to work with your state and local regulators and be there. Present your piece, present your stake into the game, saying this is what we're concerned about. Even though these are large companies, they have a lot of lobbyists. As an example, California, SFO has one lobbyist, the California Airport Council has one lobbyist, so that's 2 lobbyists that we bring to the table. Uber brings 8 other lobbyists to the table to fight these issues that we bring up. So there are large companies, but you can still do it. You can still manage, you can still participate in the process and discuss it with the right folks. Operating models, I think if you look at ours, we're not saying copy ours, but if you look at ours, I think we've put a lot of work in it, and you might be able to get some good benefit out of it. The customer experience, really customers are demanding these type of services. And telling a company that you can't operate here, you're going to hear a lot back from your customers that are used to taking these type of services. Managing curbside operations, that's the biggest challenge at the moment. In one of my slides, as I said, we hired a lot of enforcement staff to make sure that these companies are participating by the rules and not cheating. Response from other operators, obviously, initially when they started operating, the operators were complaining, saying these guys are illegally operating, you're not doing anything. We were the first airport to put a cease and desist out to all of these operators. That didn't go anywhere, like I said earlier. It was just a piece of paper that these companies continued operating and couldn't do anything legally to go after them, or there was no political will to legally go after them. So we have been trying to manage them. We have been trying to level the playing field, and now we are there where we're collecting revenue from them just like every other operator. And it's really a customer choice. As airports, we're not in the business of choosing which mode survives and which mode doesn't. We're in the business of providing customer service, and if the customer demands a certain type of transportation, who are we to say, well, you can't have that here at the airport? So we're trying to keep that level playing field, offer everybody the services that they want, and trying to make sure that everybody pays into the system properly. And with the existing ground transportation operators, we're looking at different ways of reducing their cost to operate at the airport. Either by making zone changes or by putting an RFP out where we have limited number of companies out there for the shared ride mode, or for taxis, looking at how we can empower them. And really, it's a challenge getting the taxi industry to agree to anything. How we can empower them by saying you can use apps to get your services done here at the airport. We're still seeing challenges like a taxi driver saying, I don't accept credit cards. And people that get that experience right back to us saying, I'm just going to take an Uber next time. This was a horrible ride that I received. So what's the future? Well, I wanted to show this. Maybe I can queue up the thing and then. All right, so okay, it's the ABCT app. Basically, this tells us exactly on airport how many vehicles are on airport at this time that are for Uber, Lyft, sidecar. And I could click on any of these vehicles and it'll tell me the history. I can go to the last hour on how many vehicles have been here, 566, or to the last 24 hours. And that tells me the exit, entry of all the vehicles that have gone through. I can click a particular vehicle. I'll pick the first one. And it gives me the date and time. So if I'm an enforcement person, I'm out at the curb and I see a vehicle with the license plate, I can punch that license plate in and it'll tell me which company they're driving for. It's very useful. We've issued a lot of citations, and we have, I think one of the slides is up there with citations. I'll bring that up in a minute. Okay, I think we went through that already. So proposed bills that we're working on at the moment. There's a bill, AB 24. Assemblyman Nazarian has proposed this bill. DMV poll notice, background checks, drug and alcohol testing. It's a constant battle. We proposed language to this saying that there should be a DOJ background check. This morning I was checking my email and the TNCs had already had that language striked out. So it's a constant battle. We're still fighting with them. We're still discussing these things with them. When a bad incident happens, like something that happened in New Delhi with Uber, they'll come back and say, "Oh, we're a company that's for safety and security. We'll do everything we can to make sure that the passengers are safe." But when you start proposing legislation, they start fighting you at that level again. So that's where we're at with that. Senator Jerry Hill, our local senator, we work with him quite a bit. We proposed language to him that he could propose a bill that would strengthen the California Public Utilities Commission Enforcement Division so they could enforce rules on the TNCs, which every single time that we've brought some issue up to the CPUC, they've said, well, we don't have enough staff to deal with that. And we're saying, you're the regulator, you're the one that gave him permission to operate, now you need to follow through with that. So we're proposing this bill, he's working on this bill for us, and we're hoping that it will go through. We'll continue to engage the legislators through our airport council and our state lobbyists, and we'll keep at it. Here's a slide that shows what the airport requires on a TNC vehicle. So if you come in, if you're driving for Uber, you have to have the trade dress, which is the U, in the windshield. You have to have an SFO issued placard that's in the windshield. If you don't have either one of those are $200 administrative fines. So enforcement staff issue an administrative fine. And I'll show you in a slide on how many fines we've issued so far. Each of the companies are required to have that. The companies themselves issue the SFO decal. So they are responsible for the decal. They issue it to the driver. The driver has to have it in his windshield, as long as he's on airport property. We talked about the ABCT app. Administrative citations. So far I've issued $48,100 in administrative fines. Most of those fines were levied to UberX, as you see, and it says Razor because that is their legal name, Razor LLC, the UberX part of it. It's $41,200, and so far the admin fines, the only appeals I've received are for 4 admin fines, and the reason they were appealed is because the enforcement officer wrote lift on the administrative sheet, but through our app, we could tell that they were working for Uber as well. So the person was working for both companies. So when we submitted the evidence, they said, well, it says Lyft on it. It doesn't say Uber, and we're going to appeal this. So we looked at it and we said, we'll let it go. But we trained our staff now to issue, if they're using both company platforms, then issue two administrative fines. Okay, I'll flip through these quickly. We have an extensive program going on at the airport to make improvements. I think my time's getting closer, so I'm going to wrap it up quickly. Today we're here, everybody owns their own cars and drives around. We're in this shared economy mode where it's low tech, cost shared. People are taking shared rides, shared transportation. Well, the next one is shared autonomy. Uber has already ordered 2,500 autonomous vehicles. They've placed an order for that order. They want to take the driver out of the seat so they can get 100% of their revenue and not pay the driver anything. Google and Apple have already said they'll start developing. Well, Google's already driving autonomous cars. For years they've been doing that. Apple has already said they're going to jump into the game now and develop software and hardware. Probably not become a car manufacturer, but they'll develop the platforms that does these kind of things. So that's where we're going next. And own autonomy is the next stage, which people will own their own cars where they'll drive themselves wherever they need to go.